I think that's perhaps his most important genius, beyond the fact that, you know, as far as his imagery is concerned, his imagery was nothing more than a constant going back to his own childhood. His father having been a road engineer, and his mother a seamstress with those mannequins, and things that I remember when he was a child in Greece, classical sculpture, things that I remember when he studied in Germany under Buchlin and so on. So his choice of imagery was very subjective, very personal, and you know, imbued in his own remembrances, in his own experiences. There's a big danger in doing that. The danger is that it can get sappy real easy. And sappiness tends to be very dangerous artistically because it's like putting too much vanilla in whatever it is that you're cooking. There's also the danger of you know, of the who cares factor, because we are all our own centers of our own universe, and as such, we all tend to be very much involved into our own lives, and to see somebody else's childhood is nowhere near as important as it is for that person, obviously. So you need to do something to go beyond beyond your subjective experience into a commonality of experience. So you have to take what is so important to you and with it touch everyone else's experience in a way that perhaps awakens some things in everyone else that maybe they never thought of, or that can just enrich who they are. Another thing that was highly important in my artistic road, in following an artistic road, was serving Mass under ceilings of Correggio and Parmigianino when I was a child. And that was a very important thing for me, not unlike having Matt, you know, when I said that when you meet an artist or when you meet a person who everyone knows, you know, a famous quote-unquote person, how that sort of brings you down to life, because it rather brings you down to an understanding that human beings are just human beings. And I'll tell you one little anecdote very quickly. When I was a kid, I used to serve Mass, as I said, and underneath this cupola of Correggio, and you know, this magnificent, glorious swirl of bodies and angels dissolving the mass of the cupola and just, you know, swirling out into heaven, with even a little dot that Correggio painted, a little black dot, which I found out he painted it as to mean what goes on beyond heaven. In other words, that black dot being the mystery of what goes on the other side of heaven. And I just found that out, and it freaked me out, because when I was a kid, I used to ask the priest all the time, what is that dot? And they said, well, don't ask questions, or we don't know, or oh, that's where they used to screw the chandelier in, or... so, as I was serving Mass, you know, sometimes serving Mass gets to be a very boring situation, and you're used to doing it, and you just kind of kneel there, and your knees hurt. And the priest, who's almost inevitably very dictatorial, needs you to service him just exactly at the right time. You know, you have to ring the bell at the right time, you have to stand up at the right time. And if I screwed up, or if I was involved in doing something else and I didn't get it at the right time, the priest would, you know, he'd be turning to the audience. Obviously the audience is that the churchgoers, the faithful, would be behind him, and I'd be sitting here like this, and I wouldn't be doing something, so he'd look at me and go, and then, like, he'd go, you know, as if to say, you're gonna get it, and then he goes like this, meaning that he's watching you. So all of a sudden, this, you know, this incredible ceiling, this sanctity, this swirling of angels, and became a cop. and so I hated the damn thing for that reason, but I loved it at the same time. So it was a kind of a love-hate relationship that I've had with art ever since then. So, art school served a very, very, very important function. Because one thing, it deflated me in the sense that when I got there, I knew how to draw pretty well, but the drawings were very tight. And the teachers very correctly criticized that, you know. And so that sort of brought me back to reality a little bit. And I also, ended up studying with some great people. And also had a lot of relationship with other students in artistic terms, in terms of dialogue, in terms of exchange of ideas. Silvermine was small enough and it was experimental enough to be able to afford bringing people in, people like Buckminster Fuller, to come in and actually spend 4 or 5 days at the school sleeping with us and getting up in the morning and just talking about art and talking about ideas and talking about concepts and presenting things that they were involved in. So that was very interesting. After Silvermine, after 3 years of Silvermine, I went to Brera Academy in Milan, in Italy. And theoretically, I was supposed to go to Florence at the academy. And it's a good thing that the flood happened, because I couldn't go to Florence, and Florence wouldn't have been as good as Milan. So the Brera Academy in Milan is a 12th century monastery that became an incredible museum. Upstairs, and the whole bottom of it is art school. If you ever go to Milano, go to this place because it's very much worthwhile. It's the second largest painting museum in Italy after Uffizi. It also includes a lot of modern art. It's a wonderful place, a wonderful space, and it's fantastic to be able to study there. And then if you ever want a point of reference, you literally walk outside the door and go up the stairs, and there it is. There is that. Also, I studied sculpture with Marino Marini and Manzù, and Joel Pomodoro was there. My painting teacher was this wonderful old guy named Pompeo Borra, who in 1966 was 74 years old. So he was born in the 19th century, and as a young man knew intimately, he knew very well people like Picasso and Matisse, and he had met just an incredible amount of interesting people. So he would tell us all these anecdotes out of personal experience about all these people, and it was fantastic. It was a really great way of seeing things. Furthermore, in a drawing class, we learned a lot about anatomy. Took bodies apart and went to this whole very classical quasi-Renaissance trip, which helped out as well. And that sort of went back to when I first do my pre-art school days of drawing tightly. Made a kind of a circle with that. Then I came back here and I went to Yale University, and of course, 2 years in graduate school, studied with some wonderful people like Al Held and Jack Dworkoff, and we had a lot of visiting critics and Donald Judd and on and on and on. I just keep mentioning names, but very important people of highly diverse disciplines, and that was perhaps the most important thing. And the diversity of the disciplines allowed various eyes and various conceptual instances to be able to look at your work in ways that you never thought of before. And it really served to expand your point of view. And it taught me, perhaps most importantly, to be able to appreciate many different kinds of art and not necessarily just what I'm involved with. And I think that perhaps one of the biggest danger artistically for a painter, for a sculptor, for someone who makes art, is to only see, like the blind as on a horse, their work, and only be able to appreciate what they do to the exclusion of everything else. And the minute you exclude anything, you're automatically not allowing it to serve any kind of ideas to you, just by this exclusivity of not wanting to meet them. So if you're a figurative painter, why do you have to exclude non-figurative images if you're an abstractionist, and if you do some non-objective abstraction, for instance, why should you poo-poo Picasso just because Picasso used images in abstract?